Welcome to our in-studio practice here at Yoga Source and our live streaming, yogastreamlive.com. I'm here with Jodi, one of the most beautiful instructors I've met in a long time. This girl is an inspiration, and as you all know, that yoga is for all types and body types of people. And Jodi, what do you want to say about yourself? Jodi Thompson, by the way.
Hi, everyone. Just because I'm a larger body, all of this, doesn't mean that I'm any less of a yogi than those people that you see on the gram, those people that you see in the magazines and whatnot. And one of the scariest things is going into a yoga studio because you're expecting the perfect yoga body. And so just anything that anybody else can do, I can do it as well. I'll have to do different modifications. I may have to, pick things up and move things around and tuck things under and, do whatever I need to do, but I'm still moving.
Absolutely. And what yoga is, it's about yoking, connecting, and it isn't about our body types. It's not about our culture. It's not about the religions. It's not about any of the dogma or ideology. It's about coming back to source and having that connection to breath, physical movement, and this appreciation that brings us back to love. So we would like to do a nice little information guided class for those who are afraid to come to class because of their beautifully voluptuous, I call it voluptuous bodies. And some of the asanas that are really the ones that they're concerned about are
seated, sometimes even just sitting cross-legged is difficult, but child's pose can be difficult. Forward folds, anything forward folds, because we've got this, and we've got this, and we've got some other things. And when you're in downward facing dog, trying to step that foot forward, it's not always that fluid. Yeah. So you might have to.
Well, let's do it.
Have it.
Let's do that. Let's do that. So let us begin with, well, you're already seated. So when you're seated and you're feeling like, okay, actually, let's have you snuggle up more in the middle here. These are some of the options. A lot of times it's just getting yourself situated maybe on two bolsters, and then I like having the blanket for my ankles, but heart chakra. Get your booty on there, right? Sometimes it's comfy, sometimes it's not. And then having the support of the blocks at your thighs. Now this isn't the right block. This may not be so comfy for Jodi, but it may be comfy for somebody else. And then of course, let's remove that blanket. I know, it's like, and then my favorite part too is that when you could take a blanket and you could roll it like a scarf underneath your ankles. So lift the knees up once again, keep your feet down, and you tuck that blanket in there, and you get all snuggly. Just smile for the heck of it. No, sometimes this is the arrangement, and whatever that looks like for you, don't be afraid to use the props, because it's not always just the voluptuousness of a body. Sometimes it's the range of motion, the flexibility of a body too, right?
And often, if I am sitting cross-legged without any support, just with how my body is, maybe it is because I'm a little bit bigger, but my feet start to fall asleep. My toes start to get tingly. I start to get uncomfortable. And when you're trying to meditate and connect with the breath, instead of being centered and connected, you're going, oh, my foot's asleep. Oh, my toes are tingly. Oh, this is uncomfortable. Oh, I'm not doing this right.
Wait a minute, that happens with everybody. So that's why it's really important to navigate your tools. And that's a whole different other discussion. But in this discussion too, it's your support. What is your support system? Okay, so we've got seated, use the support you need to, and using a chair. You can always sit in a chair if that cross-legged seated position doesn't work for you, and that's for everybody. Okay, so let's migrate into, just take you into tabletop. So we'll dismantle all this beautiful arrangement of props. And remember, when you're in your practice, you're following the grain of your yoga mat. This is the front of the mat, that's the back of the mat. When we come to the mat in Yoga Source especially, always have your props at the front, your blocks at the front of your mat, And your bolsters can be on either side, and you can always shuffle your blanket to the top of the mat for later on use. And I like to, this is just the Virgo in me, keeping everything clean and organized. So Jodi's going to go into her tabletop position. And this happens too. Did you notice all the skin coming out? When we're in yoga, sometimes that happens, and guess what? It happens to everybody. So, you know, finding the stuff that makes you feel comfortable, and Jodi's really comfortable shedding her, or showing her skin, are you not?
Yes.
Yeah,
definitely.
she is pretty cool. So with the toes curled under, Jodi's a yoga teacher as well, and is teaching here at Yoga Source. Yes. So I'm not really necessarily just directing her. We are going into this together, and she's going to tell you what she feels. So take your hands just a little bit wider, as wide as the mat. That's one of the things we do here at Yoga Source. And then find your way into a shortened downward dog from tabletop. Yeah. Keep on going. Yeah. And how does that feel?
Well, I'm super tight today.
So you navigate the students what you would do for yourself in feeling when you're feeling this way.
In this situation, my calves are on fire, and I can really feel my belly. And so what I like to do when I'm in my downward facing dog is I just like to bend my knees a little bit more.
And lifting your heels. Can you lift your heels?
And lifting my heels, but if I bend my knees, I can, really sink back in.
Breathe, right?
Continuing to breathe, even with an exhale, maybe trying to get a little bit.
And noticing too, when we lift our heels and stay on the balls of our feet, and then sometimes that plays a big role on your arches, but lifting the heels gives you more space in your hamstrings so that you can move your chest. And because it's a short and down dog, Jodi even has space that she can walk her feet maybe further back, because usually you navigate your feet further back. Does that feel much better too?
This is much better.
Yeah, because from tabletop it is shorter, and then you separate or step your feet further back. Now, the other one we discussed is, and two, when you get tired, take your knees down, take a break, breathe. It doesn't have to be like the whole time a teacher is navigating us, right, Jodi?
Absolutely. And even finding little movements really helps me as well. So even if I am in tabletop and I'm taking a little bit of a break, even just doing some nice little movements of side to side.
Absolutely. I can do that the
rocking
whole time.
forward and back.
The dancer, right? It's like,
Absolutely.
yoga's not meant to be static, even though we can hold a pose for a duration of breaths. The breath is breathing and moving you inside, but sometimes for me and for Jodi, we both like to move around a lot. So it's that dancer, just let that Shakti dance. And really, honestly, you do not have to stay in down dog the whole time, especially with the weight on the wrists.
Absolutely.
So come back into your down dog for a second. And another thing too is oftentimes our wrists do not have that, you're just not feeling it. So you can always fold your mat over and use the edge of your mat, and that's a whole other discussion too, but let's just give it a whirl. So you take the front of your mat, and then you can fold it even twice over and have the heel of your hand so your finger pads are on the floor. And sometimes that adds a greater cushion because it's not all the weight going into the heel of your wrist. Sometimes that really helps. Does that make it more magical? Bending your knees, lifting your hips, lifting your heels.
It's a little bit too much for me.
Yeah, see? And it's all about opportunity to experience what do you need for your practice to make it successful and viable.
But that feels better.
So just doubling up the pad for the whole hand, that's awesome. Okay, so now stepping forward. You show, what's going on? What do you feel like you are able to navigate, and what is the successful navigation of that?
The easy part is lifting that leg up.
Yeah.
That's the easy part. The next part is trying to step it through. Honestly, take a couple steps.
1, 2, 3.
And then, I can't go anymore. I'm just gonna grab it.
And that's not just with extra wonderful voluptuous skin and all that stuff. That is for flexibility as well. Sometimes it takes us all 2 or 3 little steps. And it's in that position where, in order to get the boobies and the belly flush up in your runner's lunge, come up onto your blocks.
Absolutely. I always find that if I don't have my blocks, or I don't have some sort of prop, maybe it's just even a couple of books, I'm really dumping into this right hand here, and I'm losing my alignment.
Yeah.
Because this hand can't quite reach and move. So by just bringing in the blocks, I'm able to have my hands down, I'm stable, and I'm still in proper alignment. I'm not falling to one side or the other side.
And then also you can lift the back knee, and that gives you space too with your hands on your blocks. And you can take the blocks even higher. You can take the blocks at the highest level. They're designed to be, well, you're meant to keep your stability on them, so they're pretty squared for that. So just as long as you're not dumping into them, you don't want to dump all your energy into them. And then you have flexibility and range of motion, so you can play with bending and extending that top leg and that leading front leg. And voila, you have space to move your body.
Sometimes one thing that I'm feeling right now is my larger thigh with my larger belly. You can really feel that connection, but it might be a little bit uncomfortable, or it might be a little pinchy. So I'm never afraid to just kind of tuck it up and move it back down.
It's your body, love it. So now, what about stepping forward? Because we often will do that in a practice. So how, being on a block, in a lunge, I know are you breathing? First of all, you gotta breathe. How would you manage to get forward into Ardha Uttanasana from a runner's lunge? Because sometimes we do that.
Just like doing the initial step forward, I usually take a couple of steps. So sometimes it might just be a little shimmy at first to find my balance, taking a little bit of a moment, and then maybe I can completely step forward.
And then you can take your blocks ahead of you, creating that spaciousness through the side body. Whoo, I know, doesn't that feel better though? Yeah, and then lift your heart up, and then let's sit you back into Utkatasana chair pose. How does that feel? Do you need to widen your stance with your feet for stability? How does that feel for you from moving into?
I definitely need to widen out my feet.
And we still have the yoga mat rolled up, is that okay? It's fine, okay.
The other thing that I need to be aware of again is my belly and towards my thighs. Doing the fold, it gets a little tough. It gets a little bit crowded under there, and it makes it hard for me to breathe. So if I were to come into chair pose, I need to have a little bit more of a wider stance because of all of this extra love that I've got here. So if I just hold it, I'm still feeling everything firing up into my thighs, firing into my glutes, and I'm still able to hold, and then folding,
bending the knees, opening your stance
what
even wider.
people think is that these legs need to be straight or locked. But if you bend your knees, again, maybe you want to tuck some things around.
Even widen your stance. You can even widen your stance as wide as your yoga mat, whatever. It's just make sure you're comfortable. And then let's have you rise all the way up with that vigor. Sorry, I'm in your road map. Fantastic. That feels so good. That looks so good. I love watching people because I can see how wonderful it feels to do the practice. So stepping back now from Ardha Uttanasana, what would that feel like, and what would you suggest? What is the navigation?
I would move my feet a little bit closer. However, you don't want them to be too close. It's very easy to lose our balance, to lose our equilibrium here. So using the blocks, if your hands can't come all the way down, or if you don't even have blocks, let me unroll.
Yeah, I was gonna say unroll that, baby.
You can really bend your knees and get right down into it to plant your hands. Stepping back with my right foot, same thing. Either take a couple of steps.
That was one big step. That was pretty good. You've been practicing.
Back in. Or maybe you can take a whole step back. But it's always different every day. But if you can see again,
bird's eye view.
I'm out of my alignment. Bring back my my trusty blocks.
That's why blocks on either side at the front of your mat. Good.
And now I'm back in to the low lunge or even my high lunge.
Let's take you back into down dog eventually too.
Whew, whew. Hands down.
And I can feel her energy and the breath. The more you apply your props to give you space to breathe, the easier it is. And then taking you down into seated on your shins, and then the forward folding. This is where it gets tricky. Breathe. You're sweating. It's a lot. And yes, fixing the pants, fixing clothes, everybody does that. Making sure that you are comfortable, and nobody's looking at you anyhow in the studio space. So when you come into your child's pose, we have our any forward fold. There are the props. And having the bum way up, that's according to if your knees and your thighs and your ankles are flexible enough for that, or not enough, but where you are in your flexibility for your forward fold. Awesome, that's a happy puppy. Can you take your bum towards your heels and find that child's pose? She's like,
I can't for a couple of reasons.
Yet.
I physically cannot get my belly and my thighs any closer together.
So, option?
The other thing that I find in this position is that I find it very difficult to breathe. It's really pushing into my stomach. So I love wide-legged child's pose. Big toes are touching, knees are nice and wide. Maybe they're as wide as your mat, maybe they're wider. Wherever you are feels good. Then I can really surrender down into the pose.
Beautiful, beautiful. And also too, even though you might be able to get your knees wider and sit further back on your heels, sometimes, and even in the inflexibilities of no matter what shape and size, where it's that forward fold using props. So I'm gonna have you come up, Jodi, and just to sit on your heels. Is that okay on your knees?
Yes.
And you can keep your knees wide. It's where we take our props. So remember, support. And yes, and whatever we need to do that. Sometimes for a lot of us, and I never know, sometimes my days are so different. We do have our bolsters. Look at our bolsters. Look how flat they are from all the use of the years.
They're
Just start
well
using them sideways or something. But technically, you create the ramp for yourself, and then maybe that makes it a little easier. But cheek to cheek, or one cheek at a time. But it really is an augmentation. I don't know. So it's like learning to play with your props. The more, that doesn't look comfortable.
It actually is.
Okay, so there you go. So what I'm looking at, maybe I'm like, I don't think that looks comfortable, but only you know what's comfortable. So taking the time to get the props and utilize them, and just moving your goodies around so that you can fit into the, well, not fit into, but be optimal in the position that you are choosing to be in. Does that make sense? Yeah. You could do that all day. It's like being in Shavasana when I was doing the other one. Oh, the other video is like, I just want to stay there, not get up. But let's have you come up nice and mindfully. And that's the other thing too, is mindfully navigating yourself up. And don't be afraid to move around, augment the
What
dance.
also felt really great about that is that my bigger parts felt supported. And I didn't feel heavy. When we have larger bodies, often we feel heavy. But if you can just find a position where you're comfortable and you can really just release, and you're releasing your breath, you're releasing your mind, but you're really just releasing your body, and you're releasing the weight. And that releasing of the weight is physical, but it's so mental.
It's, I was gonna say, it's so mental. You
So
cued that
mental.
beautifully, by the way. So let's do this, but similar but different. Let's take your legs out in front, forward fold, head to toe stretch. This is one that isn't just one I'm very concerned and learning to discern while we're teaching in a bigger class and you're not able to get to all the students. It's the forward fold. Like, Jodi's really flexible, in case you haven't seen that. She's quite flexible. She doesn't really need any props between her legs to get into a forward fold, except maybe perhaps creating space.
Correct.
So a wider leg forward fold. So going as wide as need be, and then forward folding, but she's flexible, right? Pretty flexible. So what we want to do is we want to support ourselves in our forward fold. So bring your legs just a little bit closer, not too much, just as wide as the mat. And depending too, we're going back into the forward fold with, I love calling it the ramp. And this ramp sometimes could be even higher. It could be doubled up. You can even put a blanket to the point that your forehead is there so your nose can breathe. Like, there's so many ways of moving into a forward fold, but creating this space so that you can get into that forward fold. How would you do it?
So here, I'm still not able to fully surrender and fully fall down. A lot of it where I feel it is actually in my larger trunk. And I find it a little bit more difficult, especially in my lower back.
Knees. Did I say knees? Bend your knees. So when you bend your knees, and you can take as many props, like, do you want just the one, or do you want one under each knee crease?
I like this.
Okay, no, the knees, yeah. That's it. And then literally you can even stack blocks and then forward fold. It really becomes like an adventure. And stacking your hands. You want to make sure that these, we're just playing this. You want to make sure that what you're doing, you're building, is stackable in your hands. So always making sure that your tower's not going to crash while you're in it.
That's very important.
So as you can see, we're using a ton of beautiful props to get into what it is that we need to make our practice successful. And of course, well, viable, right? Those are my two favorite words, viable and successful. And finding comfort in it. Like, literally, like, I don't know if she's comfortable enough. Only the student in the practice knows if they're comfortable. I like to stack my hands so my elbows can relax out to the side too, or underneath my mind's eye and on top of the block. So whatever you choose to do, like, figure, yeah, does not feel like, oh, there, that looks like your forward folds.
The most unbelievable release in my lower back right now.
And say it, bent knees.
Bent knees, nice props that are keeping me high enough, and I can just feel my spinal fluid just releasing all the way down.
Yeah. And the next one I want to talk about, because I know that this is the topic, we did discuss this before, is twisting. I know you don't want to come out of that, do you?
No.
Twisting. So whether you're laying down, do you want to do a lay down twist, and they can use the bird's eye view to take a peek and see what that looks like?
For sure.
Yeah. So just take this all the way into your back then. Just lay on your back from that position. Twisting is, once everybody lays down on the back, no matter who, where we are, how flexible we are, the first thing we do is like, So while in twists, we do want to have our props on either side of our hips, regardless of our body beauty, right? So I like to have a bolster, usually on one side. You don't need two. If there's two available, you can have two. It makes your life that much easier. So Jodi, you can take yourself into the twist. And another thing too, if our bodies are of larger dimension, usually there's a lot of back padding and shoulders and stuff like that, so the head jets backwards. So the occipital, you want to keep your neck nice and long. So as we discussed before, we just take that blanket and smooth it underneath your occipital. I could have picked up your head, sorry. And then
It's okay.
yeah. Doesn't that feel better?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in twists, again, as Jodi expressed, you know, sometimes the teacher instructs, bring your knees to your chest as tight as you can. Well, yes, but now the knees need to be,
But I can't. This is very uncomfortable for me.
so what are you gonna do? And what else?
I'll open up my knees a little bit more.
You can open up your knees as wide as you need to get them to the armpits. That's still that's still like the child's pose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So knees to chest means knees to the outer chest. And then twisting.
Oh.
You're so flexible though. And I find that when we twist our knees to a side, like you are quite, like that's a flexibility thing. You've created the space, you're good. You can always let that block or that bolster be your support. You can always put another one between the knees. You can always stack them. So many possibilities. And again, this is for all body types. Doesn't that feel, I love that one. And again, depending on your flexibility and all the goodies that support your vessel, where do you need to augment and surrender your vessel with the support of what you're choosing to use today? It's really a very individual practice, even though we're in a group setting and maybe perhaps doing the yoga stream live in the privacy of your own space, you still want to be able to accommodate you. I would love to do, yoga in your own space is called yoga in your underwear. Naked.
Love it.
Yeah, not here in the studio space,
No.
so no thank you. So just know
Y'all
that.
don't want to see that.
No, I don't think anybody wants to see any of that. So when we practice, don't use the excuse. Hey, Jodi?
Oh.
How many excuses have we all come up with?
Especially being of the rounder type.
Okay, so let's say, what are some of the excuses?
I don't want anyone to judge me. I don't want anyone to be behind me for when my pants do slide down and my shirt rolls up. People might think I'm gross.
And I got right in there. Because
Yeah.
being a yoga teacher, we get right in there.
Absolutely.
What else?
So much self-confidence. I can't do it. I can't keep up. But the beautiful thing about yoga is that even if you can't, and you need to stop, and you need to find yourself in child's pose, seated, laying down in shavasana again, it's your own practice. So you can do whatever your body needs in that moment.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So let's have you roll out of that and come to sit with me. I'll remove those and then you can roll to the side. Oh yeah, how do you get up? How do you get up?
How do you get up? So I have always found that I get dizzy very easily. And I don't know if it's because of my body type. I'm not entirely sure, but I always get very, very dizzy. So key is to go slow and to go a little bit at a time. So I like to just slowly roll over onto my right side, taking a moment here, kind of letting everything settle down, using my left hand and slowly pushing myself back up.
Which you'll find is no different than any other practice. And sometimes we're in our heads thinking that it is different, and technically we're in our heads just making up these stories. When we come to a yoga practice, we're really coming to the practice to connect with the self and to, yes, connect in a group setting with like-minded people. Because we all want to find that space of connection where we're liberated by the release of, well, thinking about the unconscious way of thinking. We judge ourselves, let go of that. That would be awesome. Letting go of the judgment, letting go of the entitlement of like, well, I've been working so hard, why don't I have this type of body, why don't I have this much money? All these entitlement things, these are attachments, and it's not with just one body type, it's with all of us. We all are one. We are all united through the prana, the breath. We are all connected. We're energy. And yoga is for everybody.
Absolutely. And one thing that you pointed out earlier was that I was sweaty.
I didn't point that out. You pointed that
You
out.
pointed that out.
Did I see?
But
Sorry.
you know what?
And she's sweaty.
We might get a little bit sweatier.
Absolutely.
We have a little bit more insulation. So it's a little bit warmer in this body. That's okay.
I didn't realize. Did I really say that? Shame. No, but there is no shame. There's no
shame.
judging. There just is. It's beautiful to practice.
Yeah.
And how does it make you feel?
I feel lighter. Just by even simple movements, simple breath work, taking some time to connect inside, I just feel lighter as a whole being.
And that's that. Because honestly, really?
What else is there?
And that's why you like to?
It's why I do yoga, and that's why I teach. I love teaching.
It's amazing. So from our light to your light, may you find your path, your way into the yoga practice, whether it be with us in studio or live stream. Jodi and I are here to assist, to guide, and to share our light at any given time that you feel the urgency to get on this mat with us, okay? So we're here. Namaste.
Namaste.